Hi there, this is Marian Spurgeon, and I am recording an ASMR bedtime story. This is a story that I found in Project Gutenberg. It's called Don't Look Now by Henry Kuttner. It was originally published in Startling Stories, March in 1948. That man beside you may be a Martian. They own our world. But only a few wise and far-seeing men like Lyman know it. The man in the brown suit was looking at himself in the mirror behind the bar. The reflection seemed to interest him even more deeply than the drink between his hands. He was paying only perfunctory attention to Lyman's attempts at conversation. This had been going on for perhaps 15 minutes before he finally lifted his glass and took a deep swallow. "Don't look now," Lyman said. The brown man slid his eyes sideways towards Lyman, tilted his glass higher, and took another swig. Ice cubes slipped down towards his mouth. He put the glass back on the red-brown wood and signaled for a refill. Finally, he took a deep breath and looked at Lyman. "Don't look at what?" he asked. "There was one sitting right beside you," Lyman said, blinking rather glazed eyes. "He just went out." "You mean you couldn't see him?" The brown man finished paying for his fresh drink before he answered. "See who?" he asked, with a fine mixture of boredom, distaste, and reluctant interest. "Who went out?" "What have I been telling you for the last 10 minutes? Weren't you listening?" "Certainly I was listening." "That is, certainly. You were talking about bathtubs, radios, arson." "Not arson." H.G. Herbert George. "With arson, it was just a gag." "H.G. No. Or suspected. I wonder if it was simply intuition with him. He could not have had any proof, but he did stop writing science fiction rather suddenly, didn't he? I'll bet he knew once, though." "Knew what?" "About the Martians." "All of this won't do us a bit of good if you don't listen." "May not anyway. The trick is to just jump the gun with proof, convincing evidence. Nobody's ever been allowed to produce the evidence before. You are a reporter, aren't you?" Holding his glass, the man in the brown suit nodded reluctantly. "Then you ought to be taking it all down on a piece of folded paper. I want everyone to know. The whole world. It's important. Terribly important. Explains everything. My life won't be the same unless I can pass along the information and make people believe it. Why won't your life be safe? Because of the Martians, you fool. They own the world." The brown man sighed. Then they own my newspaper too, he objected, so I can't print anything they don't like. I never thought of that, Lyman said, considering the bottom of his glass, where 2 ice cubes had fused into a cold, immutable union. They're not omnipotent, though. I'm sure they're vulnerable, or else why would they have kept under cover? They're afraid. They're afraid of being found out. If the world had convincing evidence, look, people always believe what they read in the newspapers. Couldn't you? Ha, said the brown man with deep significance. Lyman drummed sadly on the bar and murmured, there must be some way. Perhaps if I had another drink. The brown man tasted his colander, which seemed to stimulate him. Just what is all this about Martians? He asked Lyman. Suppose you start at the beginning and tell me again. Or can't you remember? Of course I can remember. I've got practically a total recall. It's something new. Very new. I never could do it before. I can even remember my last conversation with the Martians. Lyman favored the brown man with a glance of triumph. When was that? This morning. I can even remember the conversations that I had last week. The brown man said mildly. So what? You don't understand. They make us forget, you see. They tell us what to do and we forget about the conversation. It's post-hypnotic suggestion, I expect, but we follow their orders just the same. There's the compulsion that we think we're making our own decisions. Oh, they own the world, all right, but nobody knows about it except for me. And how did you find out? Well, I got my brain scrambled in a way. I've been fooling around with supersonic detergents, trying to work out something marketable. You know, the gadget went wrong from some standpoints. High frequency waves it was. They went through and through me. Should have been inaudible, but I hear them. Rather, I could actually see them. That's what I mean about my brain being scrambled. And then, after that, I could hear. And the Martians, they've geared themselves so they work efficiently on ordinary brains, and mine isn't ordinary anymore. They can't hypnotize me either. They can command me, but I needn't obey now, and I hope they don't suspect. Maybe they do. Yes, I guess they do. How can you tell? The way they look at me. How do they look at you? Asked the brown man as he began to reach for a pencil and then changed his mind. He took a drink instead. Well, what are they like? I'm not sure. I can see them, all right, but only when they're dressed up. Okay, the brown man said patiently. How do they look dressed up? Just like anybody, almost. They dress up in human skin. Oh, not real ones. Imitations. Like the Katzenjammer kids, zipped into crocodile suits. Undressed, I don't know. I've never seen one. Maybe they're invisible, even to me then, or maybe they're just camouflaged. Ants or owls or rats or bats or anything, the brown man said hastily. thinks anything, of course, but when they're dressed up like humans, like the one who was sitting next to you a while ago, when I told you not to look. That one was invisible, I gather. Most of the time they are to everybody. But once in a while, for some reason, Wait, the brown man objected. Makes sense, will you? They dress up in human skins and then sit around invisible? Only now and then. The human skins are perfectly good imitations. No one can tell the difference. It's just that third eye that gives them away. When they keep it closed, you'd never guess it was there. When they want to open it, they go invisible. Like that. Fast. When I see someone with the third eye right in the middle of his forehead, I know he's a Martian and invisible, and I pretend not to notice him. The brown man said. Then for all you know, I'm one of your visible Martians. Oh, I hope not. Lyman regarded him anxiously. Drunk as I am, I don't think so. I've been trailing you all day, making sure. It's a risk I have to take, of course. They'll go to any length at all, to make a man give himself away. I realize that. I can't really trust anyone, but I had to find someone to talk to, and He paused. There was a brief silence. I could be wrong, Lyman said presently. When the third eye's closed, I can't tell if it's there. Would you mind opening your third eye for me? He fixed a dim gaze on the brown man's forehead. Sorry, the reporter said, some other time. Besides, I don't know you, so you want me to splash this across the front page, I gather. Why didn't you go to see the managing editor? My stories have to get past the desk and rewrite. I want to give my secret to the world, Lyman said stubbornly. The question is, how far will I get? You should expect they'd have killed me the minute I opened my mouth to you, except I didn't say anything while they were here. I don't believe they take us very seriously, you know. This must have been going on since the dawn of history, and by now they have had time to get careless. They let Fort go pretty far before they cracked down on him, but you'll notice they were careful never to let Fort get hold of genuine proof that would convince people. The brown man said something under his breath about a human interest story in a box. He asked, what do the Martians do besides hang around in bars all dressed up? I'm still working on that, Lyman said. It isn't easy to understand. They run the world, of course, but why? He wrinkled his brow and stared appealingly at the brown man. Why? If they do run it, they've got a lot to explain. That's what I mean. From our viewpoint, there's no sense to it. We do things illogically, but only because they tell us to. Everything we do almost is pure illogic. Paul's imp of the perverse. You could give it another name beginning with M. Martian. I mean, it's all very well for psychologists to explain why a murderer wants to confess, but it's still an illogical reaction, unless a Martian commands him to. It can't be hypnotized into doing anything that violates your moral sense, the brown man said triumphantly. Lyman frowned. Not by another human, but you can by a Martian. I expect they got the upper hand when we didn't get more than 8 brains, and they've kept it ever since. They evolved as we did and kept a step ahead, like the sparrow on the eagle's back who hitchhiked till the eagle reached his ceiling, and then they took off and broke the altitude record. They conquered the world, but nobody ever knew it, and they've been ruling ever since. But take houses, for example, uncomfortable things, ugly, inconvenient, dirty, everything wrong with them. But when men like Frank Lloyd Wright slip out from under the Martian's thumb long enough to suggest something better, look how people react. They hate the thought. That's Martians giving them orders. Look, why should the Martians care what kind of houses we live in? Tell me that. Lyman frowned. I don't like the note of skepticism I detect creeping into this conversation, he announced. They care, all right. No doubt about it. They live in our houses. We don't build for our convenience. We build under order for the Martians, the way they want it. They're very concerned with everything we do, and the more senseless, the more concern. Take wars. Wars don't make sense from any human viewpoint. Nobody really wants wars. But we go right on having them. From the Martian viewpoint, they're useful. They give us a spurt in technology, and they reduce the excess population. There are lots of other results, too. Colonization, for one thing. But mainly technology. In peacetime, a guy invents jet propulsion. It's too expensive to develop commercially. In wartime, though, it's got to be developed. Then the Martians can use it whenever they want. They use us the way that they'd use tools or limbs. And nobody ever really wins a war except the Martians. The man in the brown suit chuckled. That makes sense, he said. It must be nice to be a Martian. Why not? Up until now, no race ever successfully conquered and ruled another. The underdog could revolt or absorb. If you know you're being ruled, then the ruler is vulnerable. But if the world doesn't know, and it doesn't... Take radios, Lemon continued, going off on a tangent. There's no earthly reason why a sane human should listen to a radio, but the Martians make us do it. They like it. Take bathtubs. Nobody contends bathtubs are comfortable for us, but they're fine for Martians. All the impractical things we keep on using, even though we know they're impractical. Typewriter ribbons, the brown man said, struck by the thought. But not even a Martian could enjoy changing a typewriter ribbon. Lyman seemed to find that flippant. He said he knew all about the Martians except for one thing. Their psychology. I don't know why they act as they do. It looks illogical sometimes, but I feel perfectly sure they've got sound motives for every move they make. Until I get that worked out, I'm pretty much at a standstill. Until I get evidence, proof, and help, I've got to stay under the cover until then. And I've been doing that. I do what they tell me, and so they won't suspect, and I pretend to forget what they tell me to forget. Then you've got not much to worry about. Lyman paid no attention. He was off again on a list of grievances. When I hear the water running in the tub and a Martian splashing around, I pretend that I don't hear a thing. My bed's too short, and I tried last week to order a special length, but the Martian that sleeps there told me not to. He's a runt like most of them. That is, I think they're runts. I have to deduce, because you never see them undressed. But it goes on like that constantly. By the way, how's your Martian? The man in the brown suit set down his glass rather suddenly. My Martian? Now listen, I may be just a little bit drunk, but my logic remains unimpaired. I can still put 2 and 2 together. Either you know about the Martians or you don't. If you do, there's no point in giving me my Martian routine. I know you have a Martian. Your Martian knows that you have a Martian. My Martian knows. The point is, do you know? Think hard. Lyman urged solicitously. No, I haven't got a Martian, the reporter said, taking a quick drink. The edge of the glass clinked against his teeth. Nervous, I see, Lyman remarked. Of course you have got a Martian. I suspect you know it. What would I be doing with a Martian? The brown man asked with a dogged dogmatism. What would you be doing without one? I imagine it's illegal. If they caught you running around without one, they would probably put you in a pound or something until it claimed. Oh, you've got one all right. So have I. So has he. And he, and the bartender. Lyman enumerated the other barflies with a wavering forefinger. Of course they have, the brown man said, but they'll all go back to Mars tomorrow, and then you can see a good doctor. You had better have another drink. He was turning towards the bartender when Lyman, apparently by accident, leaned close to him and whispered urgently, Don't look now. The brown man glanced at Lyman's white face and reflected in the mirror before them. It's all right, he said. There aren't any marks. Lyman gave him a fierce, quick kick under the edge of the bar. Shut up. One just came in. And then he caught the brown man's gaze with elaborate unconcern and said, So naturally, there was nothing for me to do but climb out on the roof after it. Took me 10 minutes to get down the ladder, and just as we reached the bottom, it gave one bound, claimed on my face, sprang from the top of my head, and there it was on the roof again, screaming for me to get it down. What? The brown man demanded, with pardonable curiosity. My cat, of course. What did you think? No, never mind, don't answer that. Lyman's face was turned to the brown man's, but from the corners of his eyes he was watching an invisible progress down the length of the bar towards a booth at the very back. Now, why did he come in? He murmured. I don't like this. Is he anyone you know? Is who? That Martian. Yours by any chance? No, I suppose not. Yours was probably the one who went out a while ago. I wonder if he went to make a report and sent this one in. It's possible. It could be. You can talk now, but keep your voice low and stop squirming. Want him to notice we can see him? I can't see him. Don't drag me into this. You and your Martians can fight it out together. You're making me nervous. I've got to go anyway. But he didn't move to get off the stool. Across Lyman's shoulder, he was stealing glances toward the back of the bar. And now he looked at Lyman's face. Stop watching me, Lyman said. Stop watching him. Anybody'd think you were a cat. Why should anybody? Do I look like a cat? We were talking about cats, weren't we? Cats can see them quite clearly. Even undressed, I believe. They don't like them. Who doesn't like who? Whom? Neither likes the other. Cats can see Martians. Shh. But they pretend not to, and that makes the Martians mad. I have a theory that cats ruled the world before Martians came. Never mind, forget about cats. This may be more serious than you think. I happen to know my Martian's taking tonight off, and I'm pretty sure that was your Martian who went out some time ago. And have you noticed that nobody else in here has his Martian with him? Do you suppose? His voice sank. Do you suppose they could be waiting for us outside? Oh, Lord, the brown man said. In the alley with the cats, I suppose. Why don't you stop this yammer about cats and be serious for a moment? Lyman demanded, and then paused, paled, and reeled slightly on his stool. He hastily took a drink to cover his confusion. What's the matter now? The brown man asked. Nothing. Gulp. Nothing. It was just that he looked at me with, let me get this straight. I take the Martian is dressed just like a human. Naturally. But he's invisible to all eyes but yours. Yes, he doesn't want to be visible. Just now. Besides, Lyman paused cunningly. He gave the brown man a furtive glance and then looked quickly down his drink. Besides, I rather think you can see him. A little, anyway. The brown man was perfectly silent for about 30 seconds. He sat quite motionless, not even the ice in the drink he held clinking. One might have thought he did not even breathe. Certainly he did not blink. What makes you think that? He asked in a normal voice after the 30 seconds had run out. Did I say anything? I wasn't listening. Lyman put his drink down abruptly. I think I'll go now. No, you won't, the brown man said, closing his fingers around Lyman's wrist. No, you won't. Come back here. Sit down. What was the idea? Where were you going? Lyman nodded dumbly towards the back of the bar, indicating a jukebox or a door marked Men. I don't feel so good. Maybe I've had too much to drink. I guess You're all right. I don't trust you back there with that invisible man of yours. You'll stay right here until he leaves. He's going now, Lyman said brightly. His eyes moved with great briskness along the line of invisible but rapid progress towards the front door. See, he's gone. Now let me loose, will you? The brown man glanced towards the back of the booth. No, he said, he isn't gone. Sit right where you are. It was Lyman's turn to remain quite still in a stricken sort of way for a perceptible while. The ice in his drink, however, clinked audibly. Presently he spoke. His voice was soft,